The other day I saw a post saying that this generation is just fucking lazy. They don't want to work. They don't want to stick to a job, to a whole corporation, and all this and that. And at first, a while back, I used to think the same thing. But when you really sit down and think about that shit, the newer generation, or even just the current generation in general, like even people in my age group, they aren't necessarily lazy. They just figured out shit that the older generation couldn't see, and they have we have more options these days too. So for example, like back then you kind of had no choice at what career, job, or making money you really wanted to do. You were kind of limited to what was out there, whether it was like doing construction, working in a factory, stuff like that, right? Very limited. And you compare that to now, where it's like you have so many opportunities. There are more jobs than ever, more different companies. Even with like the online stuff, like you have different ways to make money online, like Amazon FBA, Amazon influencer program, all this AI stuff. Like there is just so many different ways, so many different opportunities. And it's just like people woke up and realized like, holy shit, I can make money in different ways without having to be tied down to a company. I don't have to wake up and deal with traffic in a whole hour in the morning, then deal with traffic a whole hour in the afternoon, come and clock in, worry about someone possibly firing me, having to do all this and that, missing time from the family, from the kids, working 12-15 hour shifts, like, and then you're getting paid a 40-hour work week, but you're doing like 60-hour work hours. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, man, this generation woke up and realized that shit, and they just don't want to deal with it, and I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to deal with that shit either, That's why I'm not working at no job right now, because, bro, fuck that shit, I could make way more Ubering or some shit like that. Like, it just doesn't make financially, sense one night. And not to mention, let's keep it real. All these companies, man, you could work for them for like 50 years plus, and it just takes one bad shit for them to literally let your ass go, and all those years just go to waste, man. So, people just woke up and just realized like it's not worth it for most people, okay? I'm not saying for everybody, but at least for a majority of people, it's like, bro, I don't need to be dealing with that shit. It's not that, people are fucking lazy. They just realized that, hey, I don't want to deal with that bullshit, and I don't blame them. Call them lazy all you want, but shit, why put your, efforts and, loyalty to someone who ain't gonna show that shit back, Like, come on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just doesn't make sense when you actually sit down and think about it. And I understand for the older generation, you had no choice, you had no option, you had to stick with what you could, and fine for you guys. But for everybody else right now in 2026, bro, people got options, bro, and that's just the thing,